I would get up at 5 a.m. I'd still find time to go to the gym or go for a run. And there was a hotel local to me that had a gym in it, which I used to go to. So I used to go there really early. It was a 24-hour gym, so I could go and get access to it straight away early in the morning. And then after, say, an hour of exercise in the morning, I would then spend the next 3 hours from, say, 6 a.m. till 9 a.m. working in the hotel lobby, get a coffee, and just work through my business priorities.
Have you ever found yourself trapped in a 9-to-5 job, dreaming of a way out, but you keep hitting a wall, feeling like you don't have the time to start up an e-commerce business on the side of a full-time job? It's a story that many of us can relate to, and in today's episode, we're going to dive deep in to understand how long does it actually take to start a dropshipping business. We'll talk about how long it took Lewis and I, and we'll find out how you can carve out the hours in your day to dedicate to building a business so that you can escape the 9-to-5 job that you're in at the moment. So if you've ever questioned whether it's possible to carve out the time for building an e-commerce business while still running and working a full-time job, this is the episode for you. Firstly, Lewis, there's lots of hearsay about how long it actually takes to start a dropshipping business, but can you really delve into that time dilemma that a lot of people face when they're considering starting a new business?
Absolutely. Yeah, I recall the days when I was first setting up my very first dropshipping venture, and there's that initial anxiety around, will I have enough time? You know, is this something that I'm going to be able to balance with the job? And so that was definitely front of mind for me when I first started, because as someone who hadn't been in business for themselves previously, you don't really know, is this an all-consuming thing that takes 24 hours a day of your time, or can it be managed alongside another source of income, another job at the time, so that eventually it becomes your full-time profession? But can you do the two initially? And the truth is that time is a flexible construct, right? What one person accomplishes in 10 hours doesn't necessarily mean that another person would take 10 hours. Maybe they could do it in just 5 hours, given the right work ethic, determination, strategy, lack of distractions, you know, and I think strategy probably being the key one there, because sometimes it takes a lot longer if you're trying to piece together everything yourself, right? But if you have a strategy laid out in front of you, you can condense that learning time and the cost of getting up and running into a much shorter time frame and a much lower cost, but cost both in terms of financial cost, but also the time cost, because that's the biggest currency of all for us. So the first thing I did was I had to just have a look at my setup, my day-to-day life, and just have a real candid talk with myself and think, how many hours can I realistically dedicate weekly to getting a business up and running? So I reviewed the time that I was currently spending in the day on, you know, at my job, but also the downtime that I was spending maybe doing less productive things. So social media browsing, or watching stuff on YouTube, or watching things on Netflix in the evenings. And I was able to find that time immediately, because I remember there was a period of time while I was still working in the job that I'd have to be on conference calls from 9 a.m. at my job, right? So there was like a Teams meeting, say at 9 a.m. So I thought, okay, well, I have to be doing that. And I wanted to give my job its all during working hours, because they were paying me, they deserve that, right? So they deserve 100% of me during that time. But I had hours before my working day that I thought I could still use that to my advantage. So I would get up at 5 a.m. I'd still find time to go to the gym or go for a run. And there was a hotel local to me that had a gym in it, which I used to go to. So I used to go there really early. It was a 24-hour gym, so I could go and get access to it straight away early in the morning. And then after, say, an hour of exercise in the morning, I would then spend the next 3 hours from, say, 6 a.m. till 9 a.m. working in the hotel lobby, get a coffee, and just work through my business priorities. So the early days of setting up my very first business. Now, it's like a life hack, isn't it? Because most people wouldn't even be awake at that time in the morning. And if they were, they're certainly not thinking about how they build for their future. They're thinking about, oh, I've got to go to work, I've got to get on a train, I've got to get in a car, go and commute. And so I didn't have the luxury of saying, I'll get distracted and, you know, maybe I'll have a little look at the email inbox and let that kind of dictate what I do, like many people do in the 9-to-5 jobs. Instead, I'd have to write down the 3 biggest priorities that I had in my business for that day and just tackle them head on, one by one, so that it wasn't overwhelming, but it was extremely focused work, right? So one of the things that I had to do early on was hire somebody on Upwork.com to upload all of the products from the suppliers that I had signed on the previous day's lunch break when I called them during working hours, because you can't call suppliers at 5 a.m. So I couldn't really use that time before work to be calling suppliers, but I could do that during a lunch break. So I had the suppliers, I'd had hundreds of products ready to go, but I didn't have time. And I didn't feel that that 3-hour window of time before work was a good use of my time to be uploading products, right? So I thought, no, I can put some money towards this. I was earning money from my day job. Another thing would be to upskill myself on Google and Facebook ads so that I could get my ad campaigns up and running and making sales. So really diving into training on that step by step, figuring out how do I set one of these things up? What are the metrics I need to be optimizing for? So that, because I knew that once that machine was up and running, that would become my new income source. That would be the thing that generated me and my business money. And therefore, eventually, the big plan of being able to step back from my 9 to 5 could unfold. And also, when you first start your business, as you know very well, I'm sure, James, you are the number one employee. You are the only employee, right? So you have to deal with any urgent customer inquiries yourself. And so for that, it wasn't that I didn't feel that that was important, but it wasn't a priority in growing the business. It was something that needed to be done, but it wasn't going to, triple the size of our business if I dealt with a few customer inquiries. So what I needed to do was say there needs to be time for that. So I would set a 30-minute timer on my phone, visible. I'd start timer for 30 minutes, bam, put it on airplane mode so nothing else could come through, and just click go. And then I would be watching that timer count down, open the inbox, and that would be it. I would say, right, for the next 30 minutes, I'm giving these customers the best customer service they can possibly get, so that by the end of it, I was like, okay, that's done. It didn't take up the full 3 hours, which it would have done if I'd have just opened the inbox when I first started. And yeah, it's really interesting because I think it allows you to get so much more done in a shorter space of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you've got a lack of time, which clearly you had, as you described, you had your 9 to 5 job, but you had to fit that time in the mornings, you then have to think about what type of activities can you dedicate some time to in the day, and they have to be the highest leverage activities. So if you are a bit strapped for time and you can't have the luxury of spending hours working on a dropshipping business to get it set up, you have to be more deliberate, more intentional with the hours that you can dedicate to setting up a business. So I like the examples there that you really have to focus on either batching your tasks like you did with the customer service, and you have to make sure that you're doing all of the same tasks within a short window of time so that it doesn't take up your whole day when you're having to constantly check the inbox and reply to emails as they come in. And also learning. So learning skills is going to be one of the most efficient uses of time that you can have to start with. I know I really highly prioritized training in my early days so that the time that I could dedicate outside of my 9 to 5 was on learning the things that would be able to then regain my time. So running Google ads, how could I run Google ads that would be making money without me having to put in my time to generate those sales? So those sort of activities I think were key to learn when you first get up and running, when you've not got a lot of time. But it is easy to be a procrastinator or be a dabbler where you don't think you have the time, or you think it might take too much time so that you put it off ever starting in the first place. So it is easy to have that. So clearly hearing your story, it is always inspirational to hear your story, to hear how you had a full-time busy corporate role, but you're still able to get away from that procrastination that a lot of people fall into.
Yeah, and I even see it now. I mean, that we had a guy the other day who joined our Dropship Unlocked Launchpad community, which, by the way, is our kind of entry-level community that people get access to when they purchase my book, The Home Turf Advantage, which you can get at htabook.com if you're interested. But he'd entered the Launchpad community, and he you could tell by his posts that he was going to be a procrastinator. There was just something there where he'd say things like, I've spent years trying to figure this out. I've read all the books. I've done it all. I've watched hours of YouTube tutorials. I know the strategy, but you could see that he was subconsciously or not, I don't know whether he realized he was doing it or not, he was trying to find excuses as to why it would fail wherever he possibly could. And I think it was a case of almost like self-sabotage. He didn't believe yet that he was worthy of becoming a business owner. And therefore, he kept putting these strange obstacles in his way that other people would have just said, like, I'll figure that out, that, no worries, because I know that the end goal is much bigger than the hassle of overcoming any of those things. And so he'd say things about like, I'm just concerned about the competition. And I was thinking, you don't even have a business yet. Like, don't worry about that until, you're in business. That's something that business owners deal with. Or he'd say, I'm not convinced that Google ads are going to be the right method for the products that I'm selling. And I was thinking, well, there are ways of validating that and proving that, right? Or, I don't know if I'll be able to rely on suppliers for what if there's a problem with a product. And it's all these kind of like what if scenarios that are so far in the future that I'm thinking you're fishing here for excuses that are going to hold you back. And so you contrast that to the two members that I just saw posts from I think it was yesterday inside our Launchpad group, Joanne and Michael. So they both recently purchased the Home Turf Advantage book. a few weeks ago, and they're very new to the Launchpad community as well. I've heard nothing from them since they started, right? So they've been head down working, going through the book, going through the courses that you get free, the bonuses inside our Launchpad. And yesterday, Joanne posted, I've just worked through the book, I've watched the videos, and I've launched my business today. I'm well chuffed with it. She said, to anyone who is experiencing any of those feelings, just keep going. I still struggle with spreadsheets, but I managed to do this, so don't be put off by the things you don't understand. It will all of a sudden just click with you. The feedback so far is very encouraging. Don't give up. And I just thought that was amazing to hear that from someone that's clearly an action taker.